Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate your time. We've got about an hour and a half slated for this call, this webinar, but we might keep it a little shorter depending on your questions and the content we get to. So I'm going to give a little background on Western, and then I'll go into some introductions for Keegan and Sean. But my name is Courtney Graham. I'm with Western in their business development department. If you didn't know about Western yet and you're just learning about us now, we're a family-owned and operated restoration company. We have 30 branches nationwide, so we kind of spread all across the United States. Something that we pride ourselves on is being invested in client satisfaction. It's super important for us to look at our customers as partners and make sure that we're doing everything we can to get their projects underway in a timely and effective and budgetary manner. Something that we also pride ourselves on is our safety. It's super important to keep our employees and our customers safe throughout any projects we're working on. So something that is notable to say is that we keep our safety standards and ratings pretty low. Our experience modification rate is 0.75. And if you're unsure what that means, it basically just means our number of claims and injuries is kept pretty low. The national average is 1. That means it just keeps our insurance premiums down. And then our OSHA recordable is, again, lower than the national average at 1.66. That just means that basically we can talk in 1.66 people out of 100 Western employees. That's the amount of injured or illness we get per year, and the national average is about 3. So that's something that we like to share because we do take it very seriously. This is our Western footprint. If you're also not familiar with it, you can see where our branch offices are. We're headquartered in St. Louis, if you did not know that, but we have, like I said, 30 branches nationwide. So we can reach the majority of states and cities, major metropolitan areas. Something else we like to pride ourselves on is we do self-perform 95% of our services, which in the long run, if you probably know, saves you time and money and gives us higher quality results. And then there below, you see the self-performed services. Again, if you know, Western Restoration Company, primarily in masonry facade work, concrete restoration, roofing in our Midwest areas and part of Texas, and then some other miscellaneous self-services. All right, I'm going to introduce Sean Frecker. He's with Sika. He's a national manager for them. And then Keegan Toon with Western. He's a branch manager in St. Louis for our roofing. He will kind of follow up with what Sean is going to present on.
Great. Thanks, Courtney. Just real quick, if you want to flip to the next slide, we'll just get started.
Yep, sure.
I think I've also got David Axt on the line with us. David is Sika's Liquid Applied Director of Technology for Liquid Applied. So he's in charge of all the field guys, and he's the guys with all the experience in the applications of our different liquids. So a little bit about Sika. You can see it's a pretty busy slide. We've been around for a long time. For those of you who don't know us, over 25,000 employees, 100 plus countries, 300 plus plants worldwide where we actually manufacture the products. And then, generally in acquisitions and whatnot and expanded plants. So we do concrete, we do waterproofing, roofing, building finishing, so stuccos, sealants, coatings and whatnot, flooring and coating, sealing and bonding, refurbishment, which is all the concrete repair. The guys out there that do the sealant repairs that Western does a lot of work with us on, including the liquid applieds. Carbon fiber reinforcements, and then we have an industry division that plays heavily in the automotive market that makes the sealants for your windshields, the baffles that keep the cars quiet on the road, and then there's also a marine division that does similar things in the marine industry. So in general, what Sika does in my world, liquid applied membranes, is we divide the product families into 2 subfamilies. So we call them Roof Pro, which are all urethane coatings, single component aliphatic urethanes, moisture triggered cured. I'll get into that in a second. But basically, they all have some type of reinforcement with them. So whether it's a recover or whether it's a direct to substrate, it is a primer suitable for the substrate. It's the liquid resin or the urethane in this case, one of two types of reinforcements, either a polyester fleece or a long strand bound fiberglass. And then in the other family is Sika roof coat. So coatings are only locally reinforced or not reinforced at all. And they are made up of silicones, acrylics, and then a family of urethanes that we also have as well. All of the products that we've got have got some type of primer to make them compatible with all of the different substrates that are out there in the world. About the only thing that we won't go over is an old coal tar pitch. But as you can see in the pictures there, we'll go over mod bits, bituminous, we'll go over metal, fiber cement tiles, copper, also known as metal, a type of metal, PVC, FPO, more commonly known as TPO in the United States, EPDM. And then we do in the state of Florida, where I happen to be, we do a lot direct to concrete. That's the majority of what we do here. New York City, the majority of it's over bituminous. And then it's across the United States, it's sprinkled with many, many different substrates, depending on the application, the region, and the product that we're using. So typical applications. This is, a built-up roof assembly. It just so happens that the insulation shown in this drawing happens to be the VIP panel. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's a specialty insulation panel that has extremely high R values in a very compact 1 inch, inch and a half layer versus conventional ISO to get to your R30s, 40s, and 50s. So one of the things that we do a lot of with the Sika Roof Pro membrane, as you can see in the pictures there, we will do direct to substrate. There'll be some type of insulation, ISO, or in this case, the VIP panel. There's a cover board put over it. And then we'll put the liquids directly on top of, as you see in the upper right-hand picture. So fully insulated systems, just as you would do with the old ply and HOTS. This is a cold single component process. The other thing we do is we do a lot of terraces and patios. So we've got inverted systems that basically we will put the waterproofing membrane reinforced direct to the substrate, some type of drainage layer as required, XPS insulation, another type of filter fabric, and then we'll put Hanover pavers or Wausau pavers, or actually you can even do thin set and tile directly over the top of the resin, depending on what you want to do. So this is a typical application as you see in the pictures there. So you've got a prepared substrate. You've got the Roof Pro resin. The Roof Pro resin, again, is a single component moisture triggered cured aliphatic urethane. Moisture triggered cured is much, much different in the urethane industry than moisture cured. The majority of what's out there is moisture cured. Your traffic coatings, even the ones we make, and some of the other products are moisture cured. So they need the presence of moisture continually to complete the curing process. They're also but not very tolerant of moisture should it occur during the application process. Whereas the Roof Pro family of products, moisture triggered cured means basically you open the bucket and as soon as it is exposed to moisture, it begins a molecular reaction that starts the curing process. The product will actually finish curing underwater. So down here in Florida, we've got an application where you open the bucket, you don't mix it, you start to apply it over the prime surface, and as long as you get it down on a dry substrate, it can rain on it immediately, and it will not affect the warranty nor the curing process. It won't gas, it won't bubble, and this isn't a new product. It's been around 35 plus years, so the technology is quite tried and true. So green roofs, this is the other thing we do a lot of, not much dissimilar than the Hanover paver application I just showed you a couple slides ago. So again, the waterproofing resin reinforced goes down direct to the substrate, drainage course, XPS insulation, and then depending on the construction above that, your growth media goes on top of that, whether it's loose laid dirt and plants in a planter, or over a large deck, as you see in the pictures on the slide. It could be a tray system as well. We have affiliations with green roofing companies to do all of the above. Again, more applications, planters, as you see here, there's a water test going on in the upper left-hand picture, and there's a couple of in-stage planters that you'll see with the liquid applied membrane being put on there. And the other thing to note here is these systems that you're seeing in the picture all have 20 or 25-year full labor and material warranties on them. So the applicator, like Western, basically signs up with Sika and makes an agreement with Sika to handle 5 to 7 years in 20 or 25-year warranties. Of the labor portion, Sika always handles the material portion of it, and after that time period where the workmanship warranty expires, Sika takes over for all the workmanship, and it's on Sika's nickel should anything happen in the future. Good examples of what you can do with liquids where they're very friendly versus conventional roofing systems. So these pictures that you see here, the Woolworth building in New York City, the other one down on Central Park, very confined areas. They lend themselves very well to a roller and a brush in a 5-gallon bucket versus a hot kettle versus large, 6 foot and 10 foot wide pieces of EPDM, PVC, TPO. Very hard to work with. Even hot applications, getting hot into these areas is not only dangerous, but quite difficult. And then the lower right-hand picture is actually a large hospital project that David helped finish here just this last year, where the roof was actually spec'd with a single ply on the other parts of the building. But when it came here, you can see that it is so heavily confined with penetrations and HVAC equipment that the best bet was to put a reinforced liquid system down. So what you see there is all liquid applied, and that is a 20-year labor and material workmanship warranty.
Sean, hey Sean, can we, there's just a question while you guys are under the vegetation roof. I was going to have you ask it. So Bill is asking, how difficult is it to locate and repair a roof leak, especially under a vegetation roof?
Yeah, well, one thing that's nice about liquids, especially if you're direct to substrate, for instance, a concrete substrate, the leak will not migrate under a fully adhered liquid system. It goes down, it's liquid, so it's fully adhered everywhere it goes. So if in the event there is a leak, 9 times out of 10, the leak area is directly above where the leak has gone through the building. The only exception to that would be is if there were some other type of substrate below it where it could travel, a fluted metal pan, it could travel, but it's pretty easy to detect where the leak is coming through based on the interior water ingress. Does that answer it?
And some I would add to that is before putting overburden on these projects, you're usually doing everything you can to make sure there's not a leak, and that's usually utilizing some electronic leak detection.
Absolutely.
That can find pinholes that you can't even see with your eye. So we're making sure that is solid before we cover it up. Short answer is extremely difficult, but we want to do everything we can to keep that from happening to begin with.
Yep, agreed. We good on that one?
I think so, Sean. Thank you.
Okay, great. You bet.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the other things liquids lend themselves for is because they're in a 5-gallon bucket and they're liquid applied, and they technically have no shelf life because the nature of the urethane specifically that we're talking about now, as it does begin its curing cycle, the worst thing that happens in the bucket is it gets a very thin skin or a pancake over the top of it of cured material that you can cut off and throw out and continue to use the bucket all the way down to the bottom of the steel bottom. So what a lot of contractors do, including Western, is they use this product as a repair product. As you can see in the pictures here, you've got a lot of times where customers can't afford to recoat or recover an entire roof, or they've added new equipment, or they need to do something different to the gutter system instead of tearing it off and replace it. So the picture on the left shows a school system that basically had problems with an internal gutter that continually leaked. And if you look closely at the picture, you can see the maintenance crew did their best over many, many years of everything they could find at Home Depot and local distribution to cover up seams and joints and laps and screw heads, and finally determined, and when they were introduced to it, a liquid applied system that basically made a monolithic membrane from one side of the building down and through the internal gutter and up the other side to where they've got a leak-free and no longer a trouble zone. The lower middle picture is a picture of an adjoining PVC roof that a new piece of medical equipment was added to the outside of the building and needed to be flashed. So they used liquids to flash that detail in there. And then the far right-hand picture is using liquids as a gutter liner. So that's a fully reinforced gutter liner. Our friends at Disney use it quite often on all their copper gutters. So instead of tearing down all the copper that makes that magical experience at Disneyland and Disney World, they'll line the gutters with the product, and so that they can keep the integrity and the aesthetic appeal of the copper gutters on their buildings. Again, facade preservation and waterproofing. So some oddball pictures where either access was extremely difficult or you had a combination of different materials. So the picture in the upper left is a job in downtown New York City where that watershed on the outside of that brick facade building didn't lend itself, not only from a labor standpoint for safety and carrying big products up there, but lended itself very well to smaller rolls of reinforcement and a liquid applied product like the Sika Elastic Roof Pro to waterproof that. The center picture, if you look closely, there's one or two very unlucky gentlemen in a swing stage that reinforced that entire facility on Central Park. So that is a completely waterproof system that had a 25-year NDL warranty on that facility. The picture right below that is actually the Ford factory out in California, or the old Ford factory. It had a PVC roof on the inside, but had terracotta coping all the way around the outside. So the liquid applied membrane was put on because of its historical nature to protect the historical integrity of the terracotta tiles. We simply sealed them with a reinforced roof pro system. And then the picture on the right is a glass block facade that's actually got another product on it called Sika Elastic Clear Glaze. And that's a way to protect and preserve skylights and windows without tearing out the skylight, because we all know those can be incredibly expensive, let alone the safety risk in pulling those out while the building is occupied. This is a very good picture of the Sika Elastic Clear Glaze. So the upper left-hand picture is actually in a hurricane zone down in Louisiana on a courthouse. Those skylights were redone over the lobby. The picture in the middle left is actually fiberglass skylight array. The bottom left is actually glass over a bank. The one in the middle is actually a building, I believe, up in the Northeast, where they took a very old historic building with all of these glass panels, and with a combination of the Sika Elastic Roof Pro urethane reinforced over all of the old mullions, and a very nice job by this contractor here. Then they put clear glaze over the entire. So it's basically got all of the main leak points of the mullions are detailed with urethane, fully conformed and adhered. And then 220 mil coats of the Sika Elastic Clear Glaze goes over the entire application to seal in the windows and make one monolithic membrane, and carries a 10-year labor and material warranty. So we're going to switch gears to roof coat. This is where we talk about single coats of urethanes, acrylics, and silicone. So as you guys can imagine, we do a lot of metal roofs. That's a very typical application for a silicone or an acrylic, or quite honestly, even a urethane now with the out of control costs of silicones and supply. Some of the urethanes are still readily available and lend themselves quite nicely to being easily applied, giving you the same aesthetics and even some advantages over silicone. So the pictures you see there are typical applications for roof coat over metal roofs. This is over an EPDM. So if you look at the picture on the left, you can see the raw EPDM that's been scrubbed and cleaned, then the primer that's gone on, and if you to the far right of the picture is the application of the urethane going down over this. So they locally reinforce the seams in this case and then they put the coating over the top of it. Depending on the length of the warranty, 10, 15, 20 years, just depends on the millage and the application of the product and how much we actually reinforce. And then the bottom right-hand picture, you can actually see a different colored urethane that was used to designate traffic areas, where they took the liquid and broadcast and backrolled some oven-dried silica sand to make a non-skid surface and designated traffic areas on top of that school. So that can be done as well. Again, this is a picture of a very conscientious owner. This owner had a very nice mod bit cap sheet. It was tight, it was waterproof, but it was out of warranty. So they elected, instead of re-roofing, instead of doing anything different, to put the Sika 500 down, which is a high solid silicone. So what we did was we went in and power washed the surface. We looked for any damage to any seams, which there were none. And then we put down the correct primer. And then we put down a single 40 mil application of the Sika 500 high solid silicone and provided them with a 20-year material warranty. Another example, this is actually going over PVC. So the picture on the left will show you in process. That's actually, the red is actually a primer over the existing PVC roof membrane. And then the white to the left is actually the coating that went back on top of it. This happens to be Sika 626, which is a urethane. And you can see the picture on the right, the finished product after it was done. So again, very UV stable, basically brought that roof, that aging unwarranted roof, back to life and issued another warranty on top of it. So instead of tearing off, instead of disposing of it, filling up the landfill, the added extra labor, let alone to fill and displace the old material, the roof was scanned. It was proved to be dry and a good candidate for recoating. And that's something that we do with Western quite often. Great example of a very, very strange roof. This is actually the University of Illinois in Champaign. That's called the State Farm Arena now. I think it was called originally Assembly Hall. It was 2,000 square feet, and you can, or 200,000 square feet, and you can see in the bottom right-hand picture a very strange configuration. It had 5 different coatings on it. We were able to go in, remove anything that was loose and blistered, make repairs to the concrete where it needed to be. And then in this case, we reinforced the gutter system that was around the bottom of the dome. But the dome where you see the 2 gentlemen standing on it right now, we used the Sika Roof Pro system, unreinforced, the liquid specifically in this case. So it would be in this case, it was the 626. The liquid was pumped up with a heavy-duty pump to distribute the coating, and then they rolled it out across the entire field of the roof. And it turned out absolutely beautiful. And that's what it looks like today. That project's about 6 or 7 years old now.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
We're going to switch gears now over to Keegan Toon. He is our St. Louis branch manager for roofing in St. Louis. And so he's going to cover the topics of why and when of liquid applied roofing. Sean kind of covered what and how. So Keegan, over to you.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Sean, and thanks everybody for being on here. It's kind of exciting to do a whole presentation on roof coatings. This is a topic that gets a lot of interest when we do our roofing presentations in general. We usually only get to spend a couple slides on it. So once again, my name is Keegan. I've been with Western for 15 years. Spent all that time in roofing, and Western has been around for 100 years. And we are coating experts, and this liquid roofing kind of plays nicely into those strengths. We have been doing roofing for over 40 years. We're not known as a roofing company nationwide, but we do have that experience and capability, and that makes us a full service building envelope restoration contractor. So it's kind of a mouthful there, but we have the longevity and the reputation that allows us to partner with manufacturers like Sika and others to put down the good products for our customers. Sean concentrated a lot on the what. On the next slide, I'm reiterating a little bit about what he said. There is a big difference between a liquid roofing system and a coating. I will use the term interchangeably and probably will on this presentation, but a liquid roofing system is reinforced. It's a thicker membrane. There's a couple more steps involved, and it usually or always costs more money. But with that, you're getting the labor and material warranty that you're used to getting from a traditional type of roof. The coatings, on the other hand, are typically non-reinforced or locally reinforced, as Sean was saying. They're a thinner membrane, cheaper overall because of that, and you're typically getting a material-only warranty on those. So the liquid roofings have a lot of benefits, and you're basically restoring your existing roof. These can be used in new construction as well, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about is in a roof restoration, because that's what I think most of us are on here about. So you're restoring your existing roof. It obviously increases the useful life, and by doing that, you're not adding a layer of roofing on top of your structure, and that can allow you to you can only have 2 roof membranes on your roof. So with traditional roofing materials, you cannot add a 3rd layer, whereas with a coating, you potentially can. There's obviously some homework involved before you do that with scans. But this is categorized as a roof repair. And I'm not an accountant, but you can depreciate the cost of the coatings within the year in which it was performed, whereas a traditional roof replacement is depreciated over 29 years, which most roofs don't even last that long anymore. You can depreciate this in 1 year, and since it's a roof repair, depending on how your lease is written, this is potentially something you could charge your tenants for as well. So that gives you some options with your pricing and budget there. And when you're restoring your existing roof, you're also providing a sustainable solution. You're saving the tear off from going into the landfill. And roof tear off does make up a surprisingly large amount of landfill. And you're also providing a cool and reflective roof. That's kind of a popular thing nationwide. I think it makes a lot of sense in the southern states. But many of these roofs are light colored in nature, and you definitely have that option. There's also low VOC options, which will be mandated in a state like California, but you can reduce the air pollution that way. You're also dealing with less materials in general. In today's world, with all the material shortages of which roofing has been hit very hard with, that's just less problems with procurement and lead times and stuff like that. It's surprising when I go to order a traditional roof, there's a laundry list of 16 to 20 items I have to order to install that roof, from the fasteners, the plates, the cover board, the insulation, the glue, the adhesives, the low-rise foam. The list goes on and on. Whereas, with these liquids, you may be ordering, 3 to 6 materials. So that's less headaches trying to get the material, and less material being produced and used overall. And then lastly, when you install a liquid roof, you can essentially maintain it and recoat it, and maybe even re-up the warranty every so often, and just keep doing that over and over for the life of the structure. So not only is it very sustainable, these liquid roofs are also very versatile. Something I think is interesting, the single ply market, the EPDMs and the TPOs are kind of stealing from the liquid roof technology. When you get around a penetration that's difficult to flash, a lot of times what I'm finding out is their answer will be, just use reinforced liquid flashing around that. We can't figure it out, just use liquid flashing. So, why not use that same technology and benefit on the whole roof and have a monolithic, seamless roof? As Sean was stating, there's a lot of different material options out there, which also gives you varying price points. The roof coat would be the cheaper one. The Roof Pro would be the more expensive. So there's a material and a system for most any budget. And, I think the wheelhouse for these coatings is these very difficult to access roofs that also have a lot of penetrations. And then if you can throw a roof in there that has more than one layer on it already, it almost makes a liquid roof a shoe-in. So they're very versatile for that. But, that's something to remember. This isn't necessarily a system you're going to use everywhere, but if you're talking about a high-rise hospital in a downtown location that you have to climb through a 2x2 window to get to, a coating is going to be your best option, hands down. And finally, there's a lot of color selections. I think they'll make about any color you want. You may have to buy a truckload of it, but the custom colors is an option. Last benefit here is it's very occupant friendly. If you guys have ever been through a full roof replacement project, you definitely know that there's people up on your roof. And sometimes you're probably thinking that someone's going to come through the roof. They're just very, very noisy, very intrusive. If you can imagine a guy with a bucket and a roller, very much less intrusive than a full roof replacement. And a lot of times this equals shorter overall project durations. And, that's just a math equation. The less time that a contractor is on site, the less headaches that you and the tenants are going to have to deal with. There's the low VOC options. We touched on that earlier. Keep in mind, low VOC does not equal zero smell, but there's definitely zero smell options. The urethane, the Roof Pro, Sean was talking about, that bucket could be open 5 feet from you, and you not even know it's there. So. And finally, there's a lower risk of water intrusion during the project. That's always a concern on a roof replacement project when you're tearing it off. Storms pop up, issues do happen, and it's a lower risk for us for that, and less headaches for you guys and the tenants whenever that does happen. What liquid membranes are not? They're not a one-size-fits-all solution. For a while at the beginning of my career, I would kind of find ourselves selling against coatings. And what coatings do, they require so little equipment to install. It kind of made anybody that wanted to start a roofing company, it puts them in business. You just need a 5-gallon bucket and a roller. And you can coat roofs. And what that was doing was people were putting on these systems that were cheap, and they weren't doing the correct prep, and they were using the material in ways that it probably shouldn't be used. They were using it as a fix-all. This isn't a miracle in a can. And the installations are not easy. I would argue that the liquid roof systems require more expertise and craftsmanship than a traditional roof. It's pretty easy to kick out a roll of TPO and screw it down and weld the seams together. Whereas these liquids, you're essentially manufacturing a roof on a roof. You're not in a factory. So there's a lot more things that you need to watch out for. Identifying your substrate, identifying the wetness, doing the proper prep, figuring out which system and primer to use. And when you're going through all those steps, it's just not a cheap solution. This coatings is not something you flock to because it's cheap. When it's done correctly, they do cost money, but in the long run, it can be a good value. So you went through the presentation, you like what you heard, you decide you want a liquid roof. What do you do now? First of all, continue to repair the roof that you have. Stealing a line from another manufacturer, the goal is to keep good roofs good. Maintain what you have. If it leaks, stop the leaks. A lot of times before these coating systems are installed, you'll actually use like-in-kind materials to get that roof watertight and then put the coating system over top of that. And that makes for the best solution. So, keep up with the roof and contact your roofing professional, whether that be your contractor or your consultant. They will do the investigation. They'll do core samples. They will do a roof scan to identify wet insulation, and figure out if this is even a real candidate for the system that you're wanting to install. In order to do all this, you need to plan ahead, especially with the problems in procurement and material shortages. Allow the proper time for these projects to build up and get the materials and the planning needed. And finally, account for contingency. We do all the homework that we can, but in roofing and roof replacements, there's always unforeseens. With the material shortages and the price escalation, there's more additional cost, more so now than there ever has been. So whatever that number is, it's kind of a moving target, but make sure there is some contingency money in the budget. Some other precautions, and I keep harping on the moisture survey. This goes for any roof overlay period, but is definitely important for the roof coating. So there's different options out there. There's electronic leak detection. There's infrared scans is the most popular one. There's nuclear scans. So somehow, some way, we have to be identifying the wet and replacing it before or during the project. Prep is kind of like location in real estate. Prepare, do the homework beforehand, know the system that you're going over, and frankly, prep the membrane itself whenever we're doing it. I think Sean will probably agree with me. They probably say 100%, but I'll say 99% of most of these liquid roof failures are from the installer. And it's kind of hard to disprove that. And a lot of it is lack of prep.
That is correct.
Thanks, Sean. Watch your warranty language. This kind of goes back to these not being a miracle in a can. If you're putting the roof coat and someone's offering you a no dollar limit labor and material warranty for 20 years, I would be extremely leery. And as always, the roof manufacturers are the ones that write the warranty to protect themselves. So watch the warranty language and use certified installers. The good contractors have partnerships with the good manufacturers, and they can provide a letter before the project starts stating that this contractor is able to install this roof and get a warranty with the specified system that they're going to install. So make sure you're getting that before a project proceeds. Next slide is kind of a buzzword for us and being proactive. Proactive in roofing, as in life, is extremely important. The whole ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure. You're going to save money in the long run. You're going to extend the life of your asset. It's going to reduce downtime, be less inconvenient to your tenants, and give you more control over your budget. And next slide, speaking of budgeting a little bit more, you guys aren't going to be a roof coating expert after this slideshow, so I don't expect you to do your own budgeting for these systems. So call your roofing professional, once again, whether that's your consultant or your contractor. Allow them enough time to put together a budget of this actual roof that's in question. Square foot pricing is kind of out the window nowadays with how much materials keep going up. And a lot of times these systems are going over difficult roofs that someone really just has to look at and put what I call a hard budget together. If you're going to do this roof in the next couple of years, there's no reason you can't get someone out there to take a look and give you that hard budget. That way you're not caught off guard by a project that somehow doubled in cost from what you thought it was going to be. And finally, some takeaways. Once again, liquid roofing is a tool in the toolbox, or a weapon in the arsenal. It's not a miracle in a can. It's not something I would use everywhere. We are a full service roofing contractor. We will use whatever product and system that it makes sense for the customer. Our goal is not to sell you a coating. It's not to sell you a roofing project. Our goal is to acquire and retain lifelong customers. And I found the best way to do that is just to be a resource. And help us do that by being proactive on these roofing projects. Give us enough time to put together the budgets that you need, and look 3-5 years down the road, so these issues aren't catching you and your owners off guard. And lastly, just choose the professionals. These once again, these coatings can get in the hands of the wrong people, and they say, yeah, it's a cheap and easy fix. And next thing you know, a year later, you're in a material failure. So do your homework, choose the right manufacturers and the right contractor. And with that, I think, go ahead.
I was going to say thanks. And before we hit questions, Keegan and Sean are going to go through a couple project profiles of jobs that have been done with liquid products. And they'll go through kind of what the project was, the difficulties of the project, and before and after photos. So I think Keegan, you're up first.
Yeah. So this was a project that I didn't even know about. One of our PMs in San Francisco posted it on LinkedIn, and I followed up with her. So downtown location, 26 floors up, perfect roof coating specimen. Not a whole lot of penetrations on this particular roof. And I think this roof kind of speaks to the versatility of the coatings. This is one where they started out, they thought they were going to prep the existing roof and put a system over top of it. When they did start tearing out the loose areas, they found that the rest of the roof seemed to just kind of start popping up with it. So they changed scope a little bit, added a cover board, which I think you might see in the next slide. He stripped in the seams of the cover board and then put the liquid roofing system over that. So this is a good roof. It doesn't have the penetrations on it, but it has the kind of hard to get to location where crane access is difficult. You're bringing everything up through the building. And turned out to be a pretty good looking roof. If you see the final color there is that dark gray. So it's a neat looking job, and good job by our group in San Francisco.
And that was a job that we did with Sika, so it was a good partnership there.
Yep.
This is the famous Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. So the existing observation deck that they had on top of this facility was failing. There were multiple layers of coat on it. It had to be stripped down to the bare concrete, as you see in the picture right there. But the owner was adamant that it had to be something that was going to be extremely long-term in wearing, because that they were going to walk on it, use it for different events. And it had to tie into the existing stucco wall system, as you see there. So the picture that you see there, they've actually done the flashing system. They cut back the stucco so that we could get 6 or 8 inches up the side of the wall to terminate. We then put in additional reinforcing in that deck to wall juncture, so that just in case there was movement in the building. If you go back one slide, sorry, Courtney. And then you can see that they've very, very nicely prepped the deck. And then they've got some of the reinforcement laying out there in pre-cut fashion before they start to apply it. So we did install the Sika Elastic Roof Pro system, and this was a single source labor and material warranty for 20 years. Next. And that's kind of some action shots there and what you can see some of the tables and chairs. So the system does lend itself in the 20-year, it's a 20-year waterproofing warranty. So if they do any decorative surfacing over it with quartz aggregate or colored sand or anything like that, that's aesthetics and is the responsibility of the maintenance crew of the building ownership to maintain that. But Sika will always stand behind the waterproofing warranty that's underneath the decorative surface. So you occasionally, depending on what you're going to do and how abusive you are to the system, it will need a little bit of help. But as you can see, it turned out very, very nice in the finished product and was non-skid surfacing. And, you know, with an occasional, just like any observation deck, with an occasional wash down with some water and a broom, it cleans up very, very easily. Okay. And then this is the one I showed you guys earlier. This is Memorial Hall in Philly. So the main application of this job was that dome on top. You can see very aesthetically pleasing, very historical, but it leaked everywhere. The old window configuration and some of the leaded glass panes, the mullions themselves were in a state of disrepair. You can imagine over, 10, 20, 30 years, how many times the glazing had been redone only to fail again. So it was a long-term project, and what they had to sacrifice basically was a very small amount of window painting, if you will. So you have to take out the roof pro a little bit wider than the old mullions that were there to do the full reinforced system, because it does lap out onto the glass. And then when it's covered with the Sika-lastic clear glaze, it creates a complete boot and a watertight boot. So they have no issues with these windows now. They lost no light transmission, at least that's detectable by the human eye. I do admit that if you put it over clear glass, it will look like frosted glass when it's done, but most skylights are put in for light transmission. There is no difference in light transmission through a pane pre and post application of the Sika-lastic Roof Pro clear glaze. That's a good close-up of it and the detail work that was done. This product, the reinforcement with the fiberglass, as Keegan will attest to, is extremely conformable. So not only can you put around mullions, but you could, with enough time and patience, you could completely reinforce that figure on the left if you had to, and would not know the reinforcement it was there. We've got other examples that we could show anybody that's interested, but it does lend itself very well to old historical architects. I think that covers it, Courtney.
Yeah, we've hit the end. So we can open up for questions. It looks like we had one, and Tanya might be on it. Hector's looking for some qualified contractors in Maitland, Florida. And I think both Western and Sika cover that area.
They do. That's correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, let him know, Hector, we can also provide you with additional installers. Although, we love Western, but we can also provide, if you have to get competitive bids, Sika can provide a list of additional installers in that area.
I didn't see any other questions come up. Well, here's one. Okay, so Jen Peters is asking, is a building permit required for liquid applied roofs? It's a great question.
So I would say short answer is no, but I only know with the municipalities that we typically deal with. So I would check locally and see what they say. Unfortunately, if you call the city hall and say, hey, do I need a permit? Their answer is usually always yes. But since these coatings are classified as a repair, a lot of times you're not needing a permit for that work. But definitely check with your contractor and check with your local municipality about that.
Thank you.
Good question.
Great question. Another question for EPDM roof membranes. What is the age and condition needed for coating?
Yeah, well, I'll let Keegan chime in as well. But from Sika's standpoint, we're going to flat out tell you, when we walk the roof, either with one of our sales techs or with one of the technicians, they're going to work to determine whether or not and if it's not a good idea to coat it, they're going to flat out tell you this isn't a good idea. Usually it's, if you can dig your fingernail into an EPDM and come out with a bunch of EPDM residue under your fingernail, it's getting pretty close to friable. And it might not be a good candidate. And if it gets that close to the gray area, we're going to recommend that, we do a bonding compatibility test and let's find out if it will tolerate the primer and it will tolerate the coating. And if it won't, then it's the owner's decision what they want to do. But Sika will not stand behind that. And I'm sure Western would make the same recommendation to say, look, this isn't a good candidate.
Another thing you want to look for on those is the seam condition. If you're having a lot of seam issues on an EPDM roof, it's probably to the point where it needs to be replaced instead of just overcoated, because those seam issues could continue to be an issue.
Good point, David.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to mention. I talked earlier about having to bring the substrate roof up to a watertight condition. If you're spending so much time and money doing that to get it ready for the coating, you might as well just put a new roof over that, a new EPDM roof or something like that. So good question.
Well, I'm the one that asked that question. Is there a preventative stage in the age of the EPDM roof that you could extend the life of your EPDM roof?
Yes. I mean, with one of the Sika coatings, you could do that. But again, depending on where you're at, I mean, an EPDM roof in Florida is going to look a lot nastier at 20 years old than one in Minnesota. So, it's something we've just flat out got to take a look at. There's no tried and true, a good maintenance program, a good conscious owner that goes up every couple of years and finds somebody like a Western or a Sika that will go up and do that. And consult with them saying, hey, we should fix this. Hey, this is okay. Something that, we certainly offer. And many times we'll grab Western and walk the roof with them and flat out just tell the owner, hey, you should repair this, or, hey, you're in good shape. Let's leave it alone.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think EPDMs are great candidates for coatings from a contractor's perspective.
Absolutely.
We've had way less issues with EPDM than we have, going over modified bitumen and those types of membranes.
Okay.
We had another question come in, a couple more actually. Does it cover ponding water?
Yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb for Sika and the coatings is that if it's possible to fix the ponding situations, and we've got several solutions for that in the acrylic. And now I would never put acrylic in a ponding water situation. Acrylics are great on a sloped roof. That's Sika's stance on it. But if you're going to use a silicone or a urethane, we've got solutions to fix the ponding areas. With our urethanes, there is no exclusion in the warranty for ponding water. Silicones, there isn't an exclusion. However, we would recommend best practice that we fix the ponding.
Thank you. Michael, another question from him is, what is the relative cost between coating EPDM roof membrane versus replacement?
Keegan, you want to field that?
I knew the cost question was coming.
Yeah, right.
It's such a moving target. It depends so much on the roof. When we're talking about the roofs that are really in these liquid roof system wheelhouse, the hard to get to roofs, a lot of times the coating will definitely be cheaper. But, if you're talking a wide open roof, potentially you could tear it off and put new insulation back and be about the same cost as a fully reinforced liquid system. So,
agreed.
I don't want to make any false notions there. Once again, these are not typically cheap systems. We use them where they make sense, though. And but once again, every project varies so differently, and I think that's just a matter of allowing your contractor to come look at it and assess the situation.
All right, we got one more. Do you have another cost question? Do you have any cost history to share as it relates to both new installs and re-roof? It's kind of a semi-repeat. but maybe we can share how much it's increased
Yeah,
over.
I think your biggest thing to look at there in a re-roof is the cost of disposal. I mean, if you've got to tear off, that's a big thing you wouldn't have to consider, with doing a recoat. So that's a big difference with a new install. If somebody, for instance, down here, we do a lot of jobs in Florida where the new install is direct to concrete. So there is nothing there, and take 5-gallon buckets and reinforcement, and get a roof done and put a long-term warranty on it is something that's becoming quite popular. But as far as replacement between tear off and just recoating, I think the biggest difference there is going to be whatever the local municipality charges you for a dumpster and hauling it away.
Since we have a couple questions about cost, can you guys share, we know that sealants has gone up 150%, metals have gone up 100%. Can you tell us how much coating products have gone up?
Sure. In general, over the past 2 years, we still have a surcharge in place. It's not a lot on as with some of the other manufacturers. We're at 8% on a surcharge, and that's just to cover the cost of everything that's going on in the trucking industry. The raw materials, the costs of them, depending on what it is. For instance, acrylics have held fairly stable. We haven't seen much there, and we haven't passed that on to the customer. Silicones, if any of you are experienced in it, have gone off the charts and back down and right back up again. There's big rumor in the industry right now that silicones are going to jump again here at the end of this month. Urethanes have gone up about 13% in raw material cost. The big question with all of the products is raw material availability. For instance, in the urethanes, our legacy technology, which is the Sika Elastic Roof Pro 621 and 624, we're getting a steady stream of raw materials, and we can make that 35-year-old historic, product, the legacy product, on a regular basis in the Marion, Ohio facility. However, the newer technology that's about 8 years old now, which is the 641 and 644, that's a low VOC, low odor technology. It's hit or miss. The raw materials that go into that are anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks out. And when we get it, sometimes we get twice as much as we ordered, and sometimes we get half as much. So it's the market for the rumors that you guys are hearing out there in the marketplace are true. It's all over the place. We have heard that China mining is opening back up, and a lot of the silica that they use for making silicones, now that the Olympics are over and some of the things have been lifted, that it's going to open up and we'll start to see the prices settle out. But there's going to be another cost increase before that happens. So right now, our procurement team is projecting any significant changes and stabilization in pricing and raw materials is somewhere in the middle of Q3 for us in 2022.
Okay. Kind of to piggyback off of pricing, how are the lead times going with liquid materials?
So acrylics are readily available. Silicones, if it's not in California, are 2 to 3 weeks out, 3 to 4 weeks out, probably depending on the size of the order. If it's California compliant, it's very hit or miss. Could be 2 to 3 months for Sika in general. And urethanes, as I just said, the older technology, which still is performed and has all of the FMUL and Miami-Dade approvals on it, is a 2 to 3 week lead time. The new technology is 8 to 12 weeks.
Okay. I guess it's safe to say, since the lead times aren't as long, I know they're still long comparatively as other materials, and the pricing hasn't increased as much, it could be a good time for people to reach out and get an inspection on the roof to see if this is a good option for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know budgeting is a big topic. I don't know if we can shoot out some email contacts to the people on the call, but if someone has something specific they want me to take a look at, or I can forward them to to somebody locally, by all means, reach out to us and we can address it on a job by job basis.
Yeah. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in. Kevin, I think your question maybe was just answered about the lead times. Any other questions that you all have? We'll send this presentation out with contact information for Keegan and Sean so they can get you in the right hands if you have questions or concerns about your roofs. We appreciate you guys coming and spending an hour of your afternoon with us.
I just wanted to say, this is Doug.
Hi, Doug.
That I've used Sika for the first time just recently, recommended by my pool guy to do some crack sealing on the concrete deck, and I love what I got. So
Excellent. Thank you.
Good to hear.
yeah.